The Khalistan movement was a separatist movement in India during the 1980s, primarily in the state of Punjab, seeking to establish an independent Sikh state called Khalistan. It was fuelled by a sense of political, social and economic marginalisation of the Sikh community and escalated due to perceived religious and cultural threats. The movement was marked by acts of violence, including terrorism, and was met with a heavy-handed response from the Indian government, resulting in significant loss of life and deepening communal tensions.
Khalistani, this movement to form a separate Sikh homeland, so to say, was an 80s thing, 1980s and early 90s. The state of Punjab and I would say some adjoining regions of northern India saw a lot of Hindu and Sikh killings, and there like thousands of people lost their lives in the violence, and it was like a very bloody period. It was like a violent period, turbulent period for their entire thing. But for most communities, Hindus and Sikhs included, both of them, who lived through this entire thing in the 90s, who have memories of that, like it's in India, on ground in India, it does not exist.
We didn't hear about the Khalistani movement, or at least in India we did, but at least internationally we didn't. Primarily because it was under the radar for a very long time. Obviously, there were India. I mean, there are evidence to terrorist activities in India. There have been cases lodged against them. But now, over the past, I think, 8 years or so, there's been an extreme mobilization of resources, both human and financial, about which I've written also. And many times, the Gurudwaras are often at the forefront of this mobilization. And this is really a pity. Because this we have been informed by one of the MPs, sitting MPs in Canada, Chandra Arya, who has actually said this. So this is not something I've read, but I've been told by an MP, a sitting MP in Canada. So I think if you look at the mobilization of resources, it has been really awe-striking in the sense that now they're able to advertise on Times Square. And the kind of money that is needed for that advertisement, you and I know, where does that come from? So these steps, and there's been an international effort to link all the groups. So you have the Sikhs for Justice, you have the Khalistani Tiger Force, you have various other factions so across Australia, the UK, some in San Francisco and DC, in the US, and Canada, of course, is festered with such groups.
Canada is home to more than 770,000 members of the religious minority.
Politically, if you see the Liberal Party's politics inside Canada, it is pretty obvious why they're taking such a public stand about it. I mean, they have an obvious NDP support, which is the National Democratic Party, which is led by Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh, as you know, has been an open Khalistani supporter since a very long time. But at least since 2015, he's been seen in many photographs, in many referendums, and etc. He's lent out and out support to the Khalistani movement. So if the Justin Trudeau government is seeking support from a party that is pro-Khalistan, it is expected why there's a public show about it. There's an obvious pressure from the NDP to the Liberal Party and if the NDP were to pull out the plug on the Liberal Party, the Trudeau government will fall. And this is also leading up to the 2025 elections, because Justin Trudeau wants to make secure NDP as a political ally. And I think that's part of the political game inside it. But if you look at the vote share between the Conservative Party in Canada and the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party has got more votes. And I think because of this, you might see a turnaround in 2025.
The point that India makes repeatedly is even amongst the diaspora, it's still a very fringe movement, but it's a loud movement because these guys go out of the way to grab the headlines, to do things like, for instance, the instances which really made national headlines in India was the demonstrations, and I think in a couple of occasions, attacks on Indian consulates. You had protests earlier this year or late last year. You had protests where there was demonstrations outside Indian consulates in UK and in US, and then in Canada, and in a couple of instances there were also attacks on a couple of consulates. So those things definitely make headlines. And then the other thing that makes headlines is, like, on ground, it's the the divide between the Hindu and the Sikh communities is on ground in India is not it's not really as deep as some of the diaspora. Some of the diaspora communities, we've seen reports about attacks on Hindu temples. Like for instance, in Canada, you had this viral videos, the videos that were viral, which were obviously picked up by the Indian media here and the social media, and everything gets amplified about the Canadian Hindus should leave. Canadian Hindus should leave Canada and go back to. And this was some fringe activist who's kind of a right-wing Sikh talking about this entire militant supports the militant movement, talking about it. So after that, Canada's opposition leaders and several other elected leaders, etc., had to come out and talk about the fact that no, Canada is for everybody. So those kind of things make headline. On ground in India, if you come today, it doesn't really get the kind of support and headlines that you get from outside India.